All right, the bell is rung and you are in your seats. And again, if I have my facts correctly, today is Tuesday. Open up your PowerPoints, and we're talking about both the American and the French Revolution and how the Enlightenment impacted both of those revolutions. So both America and France had revolutions. We know all about the American Revolution, ideally, since you're Americans. The French Revolution was actually very significant in Europe. We're actually going to spend quite a bit of time talking about the French Revolution, and you're going to have a major assignment on the French Revolution, which we'll get to in a little while. However, there's going to be a huge difference between the American Revolution and the French Revolution in that the American Revolution, I know our slide says the French Revolution was much more violent, but it's much more violent in a different way. In the American Revolution, we actually fought Great Britain, an opposing power to us. You know, you had England on one side of the Atlantic, us on the other, and our goal in that revolution was to drive out the English. France, that revolution takes place inside of the country itself. And so you're not fighting a foreign enemy, you're fighting other French citizens and other French armies. So it's a revolution in that sense. And so then in that sense, we're going to see it's going to be turned a lot more violent. All right, bing, turn the slide. The Enlightenment in America. We talked somewhat already about how the Age of Enlightenment, the Age of Reason, really affects how America develops. Americans were familiar with the concept of John Locke. You know, it's based upon Magna Carta. We talked about the English Bill of Rights, and we saw the English Bill of Rights looks very similar to what will become our American Bill of Rights. And so you are an English citizen living in the colonies, and you are going to be very familiar with John Locke. You're going to have that idea that it is the job of the government to protect life, liberty, and Jefferson was going to say the pursuit of happiness. We're going to discover that the colonists feel as if they have a right to rebel against the monarch. This is a hugely changing concept. Remember, most kings rule by divine right. In other words, they are put on the throne by God. They are not accountable to anyone. And so, therefore, whatever they say pretty much goes. Now, we saw in the English Revolution that we beheaded Charles I, and that kind of takes away some of that whole divine right thing. Once we kill a monarch, you know, we've kind of opened up the floodgates. But after that, we did restore the monarchy, and the monarch is a constitutional monarch, but it is still the authority. But because of men like John Locke, the leaders in the colonies begin to realize that, hey, if our government is not protecting our rights the way it's supposed to, then the common theory is we have a right to a revolution. And so it is the Enlightenment that's going to feed the concept of the American Revolution. The idea that we do have the right and authority to overthrow bad governments. Again, this is a bit of a struggle. I might have you read Romans 13, 1 to 7, with the idea that all government has been put in authority over us, and it's the job of Christians um, to obey the government. And we need to figure out, you know, how does that work? How does that play out? When it comes to the American Revolution, how does that line up with what John Locke has to say? But for now, recognize the Enlightenment, especially John Locke, really influences Declaration of Independence. I think that was one of your questions on your homework packet, John Locke and the Declaration of Independence. Other Enlightenment ideas, bing, turn the slide, says we the people. This was a novel concept, especially in the United States. Uh, the fact that the Constitution begins with we the people. In other words, the government gets its power from the consent of the governed. That's how the Constitution begins, as we the people. In other words, the people are entering into this agreement. Any power the president has, any power the Congress has, any power the Supreme Court has, only has that power because we the people have granted them that authority. This is your social contract. And again, if we have the ability to grant them that authority, we have the ability to take away that authority. This is John Locke. This is your social contract uh, epitomized in the Constitution. And we see that with just the first three words. We the people, this is a social contract based upon the concepts of the Enlightenment and the Age of Reason. And then as we go throughout the Constitution, you talked about this, we talked about this yesterday, you've talked about in civics, the fact the Constitution separates the powers. We have our executive, we have our legislature, we have our judicial. Again, this is Montesquieu. And so we've got Locke influencing our concept of government. We've got Montesquieu influencing our concept of government. Jefferson, Adams, all those people did not just magically pull something out of a hat to create our government. These are well-educated men who've been reading the philosophies of their day. And again, the Age of Enlightenment is about philosophy of government. And so we begin to tie all that together in the Declaration of Independence and in the Constitution itself. The original Constitution did not have a Bill of Rights. However, the colonies said, look, we will agree to adopt this Constitution if there is attached a Bill of Rights. And so the Bill of Rights was quickly attached after the Constitution was ratified. And of course, the first one we get is freedom of speech and freedom of religion. Again, all this is going back to Voltaire. You know, I may disagree with what you have to say, but I will die for your right to say it. The whole concept of freedom of religion. It's that idea of toleration. Again, we don't have to agree what other people have to say. To disagree with them is not intolerant. To disagree with them is to say, hey, I think you're wrong, and they're going to think we're wrong, and that's okay. We, of course, recognize the absolute truth of Scripture, and therefore we can call people out when we feel they are wrong. Bing, turn the slide. In France, things are going to be a little bit different. We're going to spend some time looking at the French Revolution, but here's just a quick, 2-minute summary of it. The French Revolution, when it breaks out, the National Assembly is going to adopt the natural rights of man and citizen. And this is all about liberty and equality, the right to own property, freedom of speech, and freedom of religion. Sound familiar? Based upon the Enlightenment philosophers, based upon the American Constitution, and is so much an equality that everybody referred to each other as citizen. You know, hello, Citizen John. Hello, Citizen Tyler. That type of thing. And so we refer to each other as citizen. Why do we do that? Because we are considered equals. And so we refer to each other as citizen. Again, the Enlightenment influences the French Revolution. Bing, turn the page. The difference, of course, between the American Revolution and the French Revolution is, in the American Revolution, the Americans drive out the English. And so the English go back to the little island, and then we set up a government. In the French Revolution, all this takes place inside the country. There's really nobody to push out. It wasn't like we could send all the French army home because they live in the same country we're revolting in. And therefore, this revolution is going to be a lot more violent. And we are going to, when we overthrow the monarchy, we're eventually going to kill them. We're going to behead them with the guillotine. And you have that picture right there, the guillotine. You got a giant razor blade, and it chops your head off, and everybody cheers, yay! And then we line up the next person. Guillotine was a huge entertainment industry. You know, chopping people's heads off was what, what do you want to do today? Hey, let's go watch people's heads get chopped off. And so the French Revolution is going to be a lot more violent than the American Revolution, and a lot of the ideas from the Enlightenment kind of get lost in that sense of violence, in that sense of mob mentality. And here you're going to see that Hobbes was right, that man left to his own devices will naturally be selfish. And we're going to see that play out in the French Revolution, a lot of the senseless violence and a lot of the senseless killing. All right, tomorrow we're going to talk about the 7 Years' War, but this is a good place to stop for today. And so I will see you again, probably, I guess, on Thursday. Have an awesome week.